Brief history of Samarkand city and its population. Samarkand is one of the oldest and most developed and populated cities of modern Uzbekistan. According to various scientists, the age of the city is about 3,000 years. Since the founding of the city, at different times and for various reasons, its population has been reformed several times. One of the main reasons is wars and epidemics in the city. Samarkand was part of different empires and more than once was the center of these empires, and, accordingly, the city's population was also multinational and large enough. For example, during the Ophthalites, and then during the Turkic Khaganate. For example, the troops of Alexander the Great, when he conquered Samarkand, also staged a massacre in the surrounding villages on the advice of the commanders in order to deprive the defending city of provisions and support. Examples of the period of greatest change are the conquest of Samarkand and Bukhara by various Arab armies that invaded Central Asia in the 7th and 8th centuries, as well as the death and capture of many local residents in these wars. Many residents from Samarkand died when it was captured by the Arab army of Quba and later by other military leaders of the Arab Caliphate. After the victory, the army of the Arab Caliphate often killed the population, which did not convert to their faith and did not live according to their rules, and instead of them the Arab tribes from the Arabian Peninsula and from Iran and Khorasan resettled their Iranian-speaking supporters who converted to their faith. The Arabs and their converts from Khorasan and Iran, in Sogd and among the Turks they were called Taziks or Tajiks based on the name of the Arab tribe Tai hundreds of years ago. Before the Arab conquest, Samarkand was part of Sogd, the Turkic Khaganate, Hephthalites and other large Central Asian states. Later, during the struggle for the throne between the Samanids, Karakhanids and Khazarshahs and during the capture of Samarkand by the army of Genghis Khan, most of the population perished. In the year 1211, Uzbekistan Khan of Samarkand, from a clan of Turkic rulers of the Karakhanids, married the daughter of Muhammad Khazarshah and for the second time led a large Khazar army from Khazar to Samarkand to protect it from the Karakhadins. Seeing this, the Karakhadin army, Samarkand, which the Karakhadin considered their property, abolished constant taxes and duties, left Samarkand, but the recklessness and actions of the Khazar army, which came with Uzbekistan, provoked protests in the city. In 1212, the city under the leadership of Uzbekistan Karakhanid rebelled against his father-in-law Muhammad Khazarshah, and the main part of the Khazarshah army in the city was defeated and liquidated. Princess Khan Begim, daughter of Khazarshah, and part of the Khazarshah army took refuge in the Arch of Samarkand. Meanwhile, Muhammad Khazarshah arrived in Samarkand with an army and suppressed the uprising there, killing his son-in-law Osman Karakhanid. The army, according to the customs of war, plundered Samarkand for 3 days and killed more than 10,000 rebels. Meanwhile, religious leaders and other dignitaries of the city came and asked for an end to the massacre, and the Khazar agreed and stopped the massacre. Since then, Samarkand became the new capital of the Khazar Empire, and Muhammad Khazar ordered to build a large mosque in the city on the site of the Karakhanid palace, which was destroyed during the war. After that, 8 years later, Genghis Khan's army, which fought with Khazar, invaded Samarkand. According to one of the historians of that time, about 100,000 families, numbering hundreds of thousands of people, lived in Samarkand at that time. At the same time, at Khazar, the Shah will leave a detachment of 40,000 or, according to some sources, 110,000 soldiers in the city to defend the city. At the same time, after Genghis Khan's campaign against Samarkand and Bukhara after the execution by Khurramshah of the last Karakhanid Khan, the Khans of the Karluks, Uyghurs and other peoples joined Genghis Khan with their army. In other words, in addition to the Mongols, both inside and outside the city, the armies of the Turkic peoples with different military leaders are mainly opposed to each other. Most of the defenders of the city and those left by their commander-in-chief Khurramshah, about 30,000 soldiers, believing in the words and persuasions of Genghis Khan that they would take them off and do nothing with the city, surrendered, stating that they were related peoples, Turks, but Genghis Khan, having changed his promise, ordered to kill them. The remaining part of the about 20,000th Samarkand garrison, which remained in the city, consisted mainly of Kangs and Kipchak Turks, and other Turks, strongly defended the city, but the city's Sheikh Islam, Kazakhalan and other dignitaries opened one of the city gates of the army of Genghis Khan. Taking advantage of this, the army of Genghis Khan occupied the entire city, except for the inner fortress. In the inner fortress, the Samarkand garrison under the command of Tugkan, Borsmakan, Oldazkan will continue the war with the army of the Turks of 20,000 people. After the capture of the inner fortress, about 1,000 survivors retreated to a large mosque built by the Khurramshah, whom the Mongols threw into burning oil-filled containers and poured oil around them, and they were burned in the mosque. The city was taken and people were taken out of the city, and craftsmen, merchants, religious leaders, young people, the rich and others were separated from them, and the rest were surrounded and destroyed. About 30,000 artisan prisoners of war will be handed over to various commanders and sons of Genghis Khan as spoils of war. According to the historian Giovanni, most of the population of Samarkand remained untouched. According to one of the historians of that time, 1/4 of the former population will remain in the destroyed and burned city. The survivors were obliged to pay military taxes. During the storming of Samarkand, the survivors of the Hasharchi, who were forcibly brought from different cities, were allowed to return home. At the same time, Old Samarkand Afrosiab, where the 20,000th army of Khurramshah defended, will be completely destroyed and will not be restored. The revival of Samarkand began when Emir Timur came to power in Samarkand, during which time Samarkand restored its central parts and walls on new lands, and later became the capital of its huge empire. The population of Samarkand began to grow again at the expense of free people, merchants and artisans, and brought from different countries and cities by Timur. According to Clavijo, the Spanish ambassador, who saw the city during the reign of Emir Timur, there were people from different countries in the city, with a total population of about 150,000 people, while according to other sources, the population of the city was several 100,000 people. Among them were representatives of the Turks, Persians, Arabs, Moors, Greeks and many other peoples. According to their religious beliefs, they also professed Muslim, Christian and various other religions. Many were allowed to enter the state of Timurbek, but it was forbidden to leave Mesopotamia without special permission. Also, residents of Old Urgench, who survived the wars with the Sufis and Timur and the Khwarezm, will be completely resettled to the outskirts and to the city of Samarkand, and eventually some will be allowed to return to Khwarezm to restore the city of Urgench. Samarkand was also besieged during the war for Samarkand between Timur Mirza Babur and Shaybanikan at the beginning of the 16th century. People starved to death during the siege of the city. and after a rebellion broke out in the city, the uprising was brutally suppressed, and everyone except the wealthy population was forcibly expelled from the city by the city administration and the troops of Mirza Babur. Later, Babur himself was forced to leave Samarkand. The period of heavy losses inflicted on the city after the army of Genghis Khan is associated with various wars and the spread of diseases in the 18th century. The city of Samarkand, which served as the capital of the Sogdian states, the Karakhanid Turks, the Timurid Turks and the Shaybanid Uzbeks, began to lose its status during the reign of Ubaydullah Khan, the nephew of Shaybani Khan, the ruler of Bukhara, and the capital was moved to Bukhara. From this period, the main development and construction took place in Bukhara, but in the wars between children and relatives of military feudal lords and various contenders to the power of the Khans, the local ruler declared Samarkand his capital and led to large wars with the official authorities in Bukhara. Samarkand, at war with the Khans and their descendants, was repeatedly partially destroyed and was still restored. For example, Abdullah Khan II, who fought against the rulers of Samarkand Babakan who opposed him. Many in the city died during these wars. In 1685, Samarkand was captured by the Khiva Khan Ainushakan and a coin was issued in his name. But the war further reduced and impoverished the population. After the departure of Ainushakan from the Samarkand, the Bukhara Khan Subkankula Khan ordered to pay another tribute to the Samarkands, for which he sent a special army, demanding that the population of the Khanate pay taxes in advance for 7 years. The rulers Farhad Bey and Muhammad Rakim Bey, appointed to Samarkand at the beginning of the 18th century, in the 1720s, caused a popular uprising against them in the city with their numerous taxes and brutality. Taking advantage of the situation, the Uzbek lords rebelled against the Bukhara Khan Abulfaz and declared the Khan of Samarkand Rajab Sultan, Changizid from Kurs. Rajab Khan lost several battles with the Bukhara Khan Abulfaz Khan for the throne and was defeated by the Bukhara Uzbek army. Rajab Khan once again asked for help from the Uzbek lords who helped him in the war, but this time no one came to his aid. Then he tries to rely on the support of the Kazakh Khans and use them for his own purposes, as a result of which the cities around Samarkand and Bukhara, as well as the city of Samarkand, are plundered by the Kazakh Khans and their armies. Most of the population dies of hunger, war, flees or is captured. During this period, Samarkand, according to historians of that time, was completely deserted, and wild animals settled in the abandoned Rajasthan madrasas. It wasn't until 1730 that some of the people who migrated from the surrounding area began to build their own huts in the city. Another plague epidemic of the 18th century led to the death of the population and once again the resettlement of the city of Samarkand. The war, which further destroyed the city of Samarkand for the last time, which was now beginning to rebuild, took place during the campaign of the Iranian king Nader Shah to Central Asia in 1740 and 47. The ruler of Karshi, Hakim Bey Menjid, sent letters to various Uzbek Khans and lords asking for help. When they learned that Nader Shah's son had taken Balkh, the Bukhara Khan Abulfaz Khan also called for help from the Khiva Khan Elbars Khan. In the face of a common external enemy, three constantly fighting Uzbek Khan armies, Kokand, Bukhara, Khiva, began to unite around the city of Karshi. A large army from Kokand, Bukhara, Samarkand, Tashkent and other places clashed with the army of Nader Shah's son. Nader Shah's army uses artillery effectively. The war lasts for some time and the parties win or lose depending on the conditions of the war. Nader Shah himself at this time was preparing for a campaign in India and therefore he sent a letter with an order to his eldest son to return. His eldest son returns with the rest of the army. Seeing the military superiority of Nader Shah, Hakim B secretly sent his son and wife on behalf of Abulfzkan, Khan of Bukhara, to make peace with Nader Shah. Nader Shah accepted his offer and during the march to Bukhara, Abulfzkan voluntarily obeyed him and recognized the power of Nader Shah over him. Hakim B came to power with the help of the Iranian Shah, and after his son Muhammad Rahim was sent to the army of Nader Shah with a 12,000-strong Bukhara army, he returned to Bukhara with Iranian troops, and then killed Abulfzkan and captured the Bukhara Uzbek Khanate. The troops of Nader Shah conquered the city of Bukhara without a war, and Samarkand was defeated by the Iranian army and 30,000 Bukhara captives. The city of Samarkand was then ruled by a man named Abdus-Salam Khan who was responsible for its defense. The troops sent from Kokand and the militia from different cities of the Bukhara Uzbek Khanate could not help Samarkand. They were defeated by one of Nader Shah's generals. One of the main weapons of Nader Shah was the then modern artillery. As a result of the use of this artillery, a lot of destruction occurs in the city. Samarkand was plundered by the troops of Nader Shah for several days, and jewelry and gold jewelry from mosques and madrasas were plundered. The door of the Babikanim Mosque, made of the famous 7 types of metal alloys, and the green jade stone brought by Mirza Ulugh during the Mongol campaign and placed on the grave of Emir Timur, were delivered to Iran by order of Nader Shah. Later, the jade stone was returned to Samarkand by his order due to the interpretation of the ill-fated dream of Nader Shah, but split in two, falling to the ground along the way and can still be seen in the tomb of Emir Timur. The inhabitants of the city will be plundered and destroyed by the Iranian armies. Some of the population will be taken prisoner, but only a small population, about 1,000 people, will be allowed to remain in the city. A serious crisis period begins again in the city. Muhammad Rahim Khan in Bukhara. People from Iran are beginning to be trusted with many positions and appointed to different positions. His brother Baradbek was appointed governor of Samarkand and the city walls were restored. He began to develop slowly, but after the death of Khan, Samarkand was taken from Baradbek by military means Bek Fazil Bey, who claimed the power of the Khanate. Shortly thereafter, Danyal Bey declared war on Fazilbia and captured Samarkand. Danyal Bey appointed his son Shah Murad as governor of Samarkand. Shah Murad, widely known as the Innocent Emir, was a very religious person all his life, who understood that people were needed for the development of a city. Therefore, as the governor of Samarkand, he took part in drawing up a new project of Samarkand with mosques of 24 guzars, quarters, and began the forcible resettlement of people from different cities and villages of the Bukhara Emirate, which at that time became an emirate instead of a khanate. By order of Shah Murad, Tim, Kharsu, was built near Rajasthan, where hats were traded. Shabanikan Madrasa and other historical madrasas will be reconstructed. During the strong earthquake in Samarkand in 1817 and 18th years, many buildings and structures were damaged again, and then, under his leadership, the buildings were repaired. According to the city, people of different professions are placed in one guzar, quarter and receive the corresponding name or the name of the place where they were resettled. Thus, after the Nader Shah war in Samarkand, The main part of the city was restored and several tens of thousands of people were resettled there. For example, about 4,000 people will be forcibly resettled from Uratpa and Khojand. New neighborhoods will appear in the city, and they will be named depending on who moved from where. Immigrants from Tashkent, in the Tashkent quarter. In the Zaman quarter, immigrants from the city of Zaman in modern Jizak. In the Urgti quarter, resettlement from the city of Urgut to the present Samarkand region. In the Urmitani quarter, immigrants from the city of Urmitan in the territory of the modern Republic of Tajikistan. In the Yemeni quarter, immigrants from the village of Yem in the modern Jizak region of Uzbekistan. In the Mubarak quarter, there are migrants from Uratpa, from the city of Uratpa, Istravshan, in modern Tajikistan. In the Karabayagsikla quarter, migrants from Toytep and Tashkent in the present Tashkent region of Uzbekistan. In the Kavasi quarter there are immigrants from the city of Kavoz in the modern Sirdria region of Uzbekistan. In the Dakbedai quarter, migrants from the Dakbed village of the Samarkand region of Uzbekistan. During the reign of Shah Murad, old quarters were also restored, such as the old Charngaran, leather handlers, Sozangaran, Sozana, embroiderers, Chakradaza, Chakarkurgan, and those who were voluntarily or forcibly resettled from different lands of the emirate. Their different citizens of the Bukhara Uzbek Emirate began to move and live in different professions. As a result of the migration of the population during the post-Shah Murad period, the city was moved from the city of Shahrizabs, Kashgar, Uyghurs and Dungans, Yangi Karabad, from the village of Nakanda Havasa and the village of Boyavit Bulungura, Okasarai. The population from the village of Sulfakabitak, Kulolan from the city of Urmitan, Kokand, from the city of Kokand, Gijdavan, Bukhara, city, Andijan, from Andijan, Bukhari, from Bukhara, Turkmen, Balkayan, from Balsh, Urgenji, from Urgenj, Kultipa, from the village around Uratipa, appear and become part of the city. The quarters relocated from Bukhara also have Galausia and Kavola quarters. The name of the Kavola quarter can be derived from the name of the local gypsy tribe living around Samarkand. There are also different assumptions about the Khazar, Ming, quarter, which may be Khazar settlers from Afghanistan. In the 1820s, the population of the city of Samarkand was estimated at 50,000 people. In the 1887 year, the ethnic composition of the population of the Samarkand region was as follows: Uzbeks, 507,587 people. Sart, mostly lived in the city and spoke the Turkic and Uzbek languages, 18,073 people. Tajiks, 230,384 people. Russians, 14,006 people. Polyakov, 1,531 people. Germans, 440 people. Armenians, 370 people. Persians, 1,723 people. Afghans, 281 people. Jews, 1,312 people. Tatars, 460 people. Kazakh, Kyrgyzstani, 63,091 people. Kashgar, Uyghurs and Turks, 19,993 people. Other nationalities numbered 770 people. The total population of the city of Samarkand in 1897 was 55,120 people, and by 1914, 17 years later, The population of the city was 97,530 people. This shows that during the time of Tsarist Russia the resettlement of people to Samarkand from other regions and surrounding towns and villages was active. As of 2017, according to official statistics, 3,685,700 people lived in the Samarkand region of the Republic of Uzbekistan. By ethnic composition, Uzbeks are 88%. Tajiks are 7.4%, Russians are 1.3%, Kazakhs 0.1%, and other nationalities 3.2%. According to official data for 2015, the permanent population of the city, and Samarkand, was about 504,423 people. In 1924, Samarkand became the capital of the Uzbek SSR, and population migration to the city increased. Until the status of the capital in the city of the Russian-speaking part of the city has been received, a census will be carried out, as a result of which it will be revealed that several thousand people have moved to this part of the city in a year. That is, the number of those who heard that Samarkand will be the capital. The population of the city of Samarkand is mixed than in other large cities of Uzbekistan. In some of its districts the population can speak several Uzbek, Tajik and Russian languages, depending on the area in which some of them live. The names of the old quarters also changed somewhat during the USSR and independence, but the names of many quarters of the main period of Shah Murad remained. But it would be wrong to say that only the displaced population lived in these quarters, since migration led to the migration of another part of the population. Some communities are predominantly Tajik-speaking, others are Uzbek-speaking, and in the districts of the Samarkand region, more than 90% of the population are Uzbeks alone. Thank you for your attention. I wish you peace and health.